We have a police force that will disproportionately imprison good, honest Americans. And at that point, I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Abolish the police.
Yeah, I am sympathetic to the idea of in these cities we're just saying, well, okay, give them what they want. If this is what they want, then let them. You look at San Francisco and all the looting and everything, and I know there are a lot of people on the right who are saying, well, hey, this is what they voted for, so I got no problem with it. And I understand that, but then also I can't, as fundamentally a law and order and justice kind of guy, I just hate the idea of bad guys winning. And so, yeah, I understand that you live in San Francisco, you voted for this, but at the same time, these are really bad guys who are doing the looting and the stealing, and I don't like the fact that they win. And the bad guys, you get rid of the cops in the middle of the city, and it's going to be really bad for whatever good people decide to stay there, but the bad guys will love it. I mean, they're fine with it.
The cops are acting like bad guys in many instances. A lot of times there's been a lot of incidences where police officers don't respond to crimes. A lot of times police officers just stand by and watch crimes happen because of this kind of chilling effect, which you correctly pointed out. But when it comes to political issues, when it comes to going after people for not doing the mask mandate or not locking down when they were supposed to, they're on people like White on Rice, and they go after them, and they go after them for the fullest extent of the law. And I think there's an argument to make here that the police forces have been politicized to a point where only certain crimes based on your ideology get punished while others get ignored. I would call that behavior the behavior of bad guys enforcing bad edicts and decrees.
I think there were a lot of good cops. A lot of good cops quit. I think when it got too hot, you had a lot of cops saying, I'm not going to enforce these mandates and lockdowns. I'll resign. A lot of who are saying, I will not enforce or be part of vaccine mandates. They resign. And who's left remaining? The cops who are like, I don't care. Tell me what to do and I'll do it. So let me ask you a question. Do you believe that, what's your stance on the Second Amendment?
Fully in favor of it. Yeah.
Do you think it's like absolute?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I've grown to be, fairly absolute on the Second Amendment. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It means what it means. It's verbatim. That means arms, period. It means during the Revolutionary period, there were privateers. Privateers had arsenals in these battleships. They had cannons, they had grape shot, they could take on governments, and they would. The privateers would get a letter of marque and then go and disrupt French supply lines. These were private citizens with cannons. And so the Founding Fathers are like, you can have all this stuff, all of it. Because a militia just a bunch of guys with muskets? No. Militia has weapons, artillery, they have other means. Today, I think if you want to change these laws, if you want to ban guns, well, you got a Second Amendment to contend with. So the issue now is, in places like Chicago, in New York, where they don't allow you to even bear arms in any capacity. The cops, in my opinion, who would arrest you simply because you have a gun. I don't care if you're a gang member. I don't care if you're Antifa. I don't care if you're a working class plumber. You have a right to keep and bear arms, period. I don't care if you're Gage Grosskreutz in Kenosha at a riot. You have a right to keep and bear arms. You don't have a right to use that weapon illegally to cause damage, to hurt people, but you can have a gun on your person. Second Amendment says it. My opinion is very much thanks to, credit to Michael Malice, who's going to be very excited by the shout out, because I'm going to say it again. The police, and we were talking about this when we were in Austin, a police officer who arrests a person who is constitutionally keeping and bearing a gun and doing nothing else is a bad guy. And the problem I have now is...
If he's constitutionally doing so, yeah.
Right, but
what about a felon?
So that's a good argument. Felons have gone through due process and have lost the right to keep and bear arms. So I would argue that. But I've said this before. We had Alan West on the show, and I said I think you get out of prison, you get your gun back, you get your vote back. But many people correctly pointed out that the Constitution's rights can be rescinded through due process, meaning you can lose your right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness if you commit a crime. We lock you up. And so you can lose your right to keep and bear arms if you commit a serious crime. You go through due process. And then we say, as a felon, you cannot keep and bear arms. That I agree with. I think there should probably be some, a time limit. It's not just indefinite for the rest of your life. It should be like, and you're now a registered felon for 3 years. And after that, we allow you to go back to having all your rights or whatever. But my issue is in Chicago. We have a lot of cases where 35-year-old dad, he's got 2 kids, Chicago's gang territory. He lives on the South Side. And he's like, I need a gun to protect my family. But the state won't let him do it. So he gets a gun by driving to Indiana, buying it legally, going home with it. The cops show up at his house. You are going to prison for the next, 6 years for illegal gun possession, which I don't believe should exist. Those cops, in my opinion, are bad guys. There's good working class people who just want to defend themselves, and they get targeted in this way. Or there's two big stories. You have in Chicago, a 60-year-old woman from Tennessee was I think or from Kentucky, I'm not sure, was going to Chicago for a vacation, and she brought her snub nose 38 or whatever. And when she was at this year's tower, now Willis Tower, they asked before she went up to the observation deck, do you have, if you have any weapons, when you go through the metal detector? She said, yeah, I have my concealed carry with me and my permit. And the cop was like, all right, ma'am, turn around, hands behind your back, you're under arrest. And she did go to prison. They actually sent her to prison, and they said, we don't care. Illinois' laws are not, Kentucky's. That to me is evil.
Agreed.
So I don't think, at that time, you had bad cops, and you had a lot of bad cops willing to absolutely enforce laws that are unconstitutional. The main issue I have now is, how many resignations have we seen over the past year or two? There's a video of a cop in Seattle being like, you guys win, yelling at protesters. I quit. I'm out. I'm not doing this anymore. They've been pressured out by the defund the police, the political pressures of the Soros DAs. And what's left is, you got a video from Seattle where there's a guy walking backwards with a baton or with a bat or something. Antifa is pointing things at him and threatening him, and he's walking backwards with his hands up, telling him to back off. Cops are waiting at the intersection, and they yell at him, get on the ground, hands on your head. Then they walk over to Antifa. I'm so sorry about that. Would you mind having your dog step back? I don't want anyone getting hurt. Thank you so much, ma'am. And then they arrest the guy. The guy who was retreating from Antifa is the guy who got arrested. That's the problem I have right now. If cops are scared of Black Lives Matter and Antifa, that means it's going to be independents, conservatives, libertarians who are going to be shuffled into prisons, and they're going to be releasing Antifa or refusing to prosecute.
Yeah, I think... First of all, the whole following orders excuse is never that never washes, and we know that historically, and that goes for cops too. And I would agree that finding someone who's made some basically that's like a paperwork mistake where someone held the gun legally and they crossed state lines, and then you just decide, okay, I'm going to ruin your life. I'm just because I can, I'm going to ruin your whole life. That is definitely evil. And I do agree also that there's a problem when we are actively pushing the good ones out through all the things that you point out. But I still think that you look at the cops who are still on the force. There are still plenty of good ones left, and I've talked to them myself, and the reasons that they give why they're still there. One reason is actually I believe in this job and I care about it. And another reason is a real simple one. With this is what I've done my whole life. This is how I feed my family, and this is how I support my family. And I'm always sympathetic to that because I have 4 kids myself. I haven't been in a position where I've had to think about, am I just going to leave all this behind and I won't have a way to feed my kids? I haven't had to think about that. But when you really have to think about it, it's just, I can certainly understand someone deciding I'm staying in this because this is my livelihood.
I do agree. And I don't think, I think many of the cops that are enforcing this stuff are mindless in that they don't know, they don't care. But I think that means the good cops that remain and those who say, look, I know that's bad, but I have to support my family, they need to start enacting police nullification. Like jury nullification, the officers should refuse to enforce laws, and many are, that are unconstitutional or unjust. So we have sanctuary counties, sanctuary states for gun rights, where the police have straight up said, we are not going to arrest anybody for guns because they have a right to keep and bear them. Now, I think it's reasonable. If I've got some kind of long gun or a handgun on my person, I think if a cop comes up to me and says, we want to check out the weapon to make sure, it's safe and we want to talk to you about it within reason, I think that's acceptable. But I also think then if I was in an area where, say, the open carry is not allowed, or a person was, let's say a person, I believe the police should probably be like, hey, we want to talk to you about the weapon. We want you to know that the statute here is that you can't have the weapon out in public, but we're not going to enforce that because it's unconstitutional. We want to make sure you're not committing any crimes. We want to make sure everything's safe. You're good. Have a nice day, sir. I think the police should be doing that.
And they already do. They do it in favor of BLM. They do it in favor of Antifa, and we have to call it out for what they're doing.
That's right.
And that line, I have to disagree with you a little bit here, Matt. That line, I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing this just for my kids, just for my family. This is what led to the worst human atrocities all throughout recorded human history. I'm not just talking about Germany. I think that's overplayed, overused. But when we look at, for Soviet Russia as an example with the KGB, even if we look at what's happening right now in Australia, Australia. People are being hauled off into camps because they were around people that tested positive for COVID. And police officers are literally ruining people's lives, telling them that they can't go to the supermarket, denying them basic human rights to food and water, all because they didn't comply with the whims of the state. And the state is only willing to pull it off because officers saying, well, I'm just doing my job. I just have to feed my family. I think it's dangerous. And I think that needs to be called out.
Yeah, just to clarify on that point, I don't accept that excuse for police officers who are doing something evil, like we talked about. I agree with you there. That goes into the I'm following orders, I'm feeding my family. If you're doing something evil, you're doing something evil. There's no excuse for it. I'm talking about in general. We look across the country, the police officers who, in spite of all of this, are still on the force. Why are they there? I think the good ones anyway. I think that's when you get into two reasons. One is I really believe in this and I want to do it, and the other is I'm feeding my family. And so it's not just that the only cops who remain across the board are, the bad ones. I don't think that's true.
Thanks for checking out this segment from the Timcast IRL podcast. If you want to watch live, you can check out this channel Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. And don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, and if you want more unfiltered and uncensored content with all of these guests, go to timcast.com and become a member. All of these guests you know and love in exclusive segments on our website where we are unrestricted in what we talk about, so you'll definitely not want to miss it. Thanks for hanging out. We'll see you all next time.